The Peddler. How many fleeting memories of seemingly trivial events, chance encounters, glimpsed or guessed at, or merely suspected private dramas settle into our young, still unformed minds from early childhood. And later, like threads winding through a labyrinth, they gradually impose upon us a bleak understanding of life's reality. Wandering aimlessly along country roads, absorbed in a stream of dreams and reflections, I amuse myself with their whimsical shifts and drift far away in thought from everything around me. Each time my thoughts return to the past, they revive some long-forgotten adventure, sometimes comical, sometimes ominous. These images rise before me in sudden clusters, like field birds fluttering out from behind the bushes as I approach. One day this summer, I was walking, as they say, wherever my eyes led me, along a mountain road that hung above the right bank of Lake Boget. My gaze glided over the mirror-like surface of the water, drawn to its pale, even blue, veiled in the shimmering reflections of the sun's rays, already leaning toward sunset. I felt a tender affection stir in my heart, an affection born in childhood, for the surface of lakes, rivers, and seas. The lake stretched before me in a broad ribbon, so long that its edges vanished into the horizon, one toward the Rhône, the other in the direction of Boget. On the opposite shore rose the jagged peak of Cat's Tooth Mountain, serrated like a comb all the way to its summit. On both sides of the road, grapevines arched from tree to tree, their lush foliage muffling the slender branches beneath. They spilled across the surrounding fields in green, yellow, and red garlands, and hung from the trees in elegant festoons, speckled with plump clusters of black grapes. The dusty white road was empty except for me, when suddenly, from behind a grove of tall trees that concealed the village of St. Innocent, a man appeared. Bent under the weight of his load and leaning on a stick, he walked straight toward me. As the distance between us closed, I recognized a peddler, one of those small-time merchants who carry their shop on their back and go from village to village, hut to hut, selling cheap goods for a modest profit. At once, a long-buried memory surfaced in my mind, a seemingly insignificant nighttime encounter on the road between Argenteuil and Paris. It had lingered just beyond the threshold of consciousness since I was 25. Back then, the joy of life, for me, lay in rowing excursions. I rented a room from one of the innkeepers in Argenteuil and every evening took the slow, bureaucratic train out of Paris, a long train that crawled along like a tortoise, stopping at every little station to unload crowds of men with bundles and parcels. These men, prone to growing paunches, were heavy-footed from lack of walking. Their trousers fit poorly, ruined by the stiff chairs of government offices. That train, which seemed to carry the peculiar scent of filing cabinets, departmental folders, and official documents, brought me to Argenteuil, where my boat awaited. All it took was a push from the dock, and I was off down the Seine. Pulling at the oars, I would row to dine in Béden, Chatou, Épinay, or Saint-Ouen, then return to Argenteuil, moor the boat, and if the night was moonlit, walk back to Paris on foot. One such night, on the pale road ahead of me, I spotted a man also heading toward Paris. I often encountered nighttime travelers from the suburbs, who tended to unsettle late-returning city folk. This man trudged slowly, bent beneath a heavy burden. I approached with brisk steps, my footfalls echoing loudly on the highway. He stopped, turned, and seeing me close, crossed to the other side of the road. I was about to pass him without slowing when he called out. "Good evening, sir." "Good evening, kind fellow," I replied. "Heading far?" he asked. "To Paris." "Well then, you'll be there soon. Hard to keep up with you, especially with a load like mine." I slowed my pace, wondering why he'd spoken to me. What was he carrying in that large box? A vague suspicion stirred, was something amiss? Every morning the papers were full of crime reports, supposedly committed at night on the peninsula of Gennevilliers. Surely they couldn't all be fiction. No one invents endless lists of arrests and atrocities just to entertain readers. On the other hand, the stranger's voice sounded more timid than bold, and his manner suggested cautious prudence rather than menace. "Just in case," I asked. "And how far do you have to go?" "Only to Asnières." "You live there?" "Yes, sir. I'm a peddler. I live in Asnières." He stepped off the side path, the one shaded by trees where people stroll during the day, and moved toward the center of the road. I followed suit. We both held our walking sticks tightly and eyed each other warily. As we drew closer, I felt reassured. Apparently, he did too. "Would you mind walking a bit slower?" he asked. "Why so?" "Well, I don't much like this road at night. When you've got goods on your back, it's safer to walk in pairs. People think twice before jumping two men." I sensed he was sincere and agreed. It was already past midnight when we walked side by side from Argenteuil to Asnières. "How did you dare take the road so late?" I asked. He told me everything, without holding back. He'd left home that morning with enough merchandise to last 3 or 4 days and hadn't planned to return that same night. But business had gone so well that he had to hurry back for more stock. His customers had already paid deposits. With visible satisfaction, the peddler explained that he knew how to play the game. He wasn't easily fooled. He knew how to present his goods, how to praise his samples, and sometimes sold entire batches with a promise to deliver them to the buyer's home within 2 days, no later. "I've got my own shop in Asnières," he added. "My wife runs it." "So you're married?" "Yes, sir. A year and 3 months now. And what a lovely wife I have. She'll be surprised, no doubt, to see me back tonight." He went on to tell me about his courtship. He'd pursued the girl for 2 years before she finally agreed to marry him. Even as a teenager, she had begun selling odds and ends from her own little shop on the street corner: ribbons, summer flowers, and most notably, dainty buckles for ladies' shoes and other trinkets she managed to buy cheaply thanks to the favor of a certain manufacturer. Everyone in Asnières knew the girl. They called her Little Blue, because she almost always wore dresses in shades of blue. She was a jack of all trades, earning a decent living, though lately she seemed to be ailing. A woman's matter, perhaps. Maybe she was expecting. Still, he couldn't say for sure. Business was brisk. Her husband roamed the nearby villages with his box, showing samples to small local shopkeepers. He took goods on commission from various manufacturers and acted as a kind of traveling agent, while also working for himself. "And you, sir, what do you do?" the peddler asked me. I didn't answer directly, but told him that I kept a sailboat and 2 racing skiffs moored at the Argenteuil dock. Every evening I came to Argenteuil to practice rowing, and for the sake of exercise, I sometimes walked back to Paris, where I had a profitable occupation. "You know what," the peddler replied, "if I had the kind of money you do, I swear to God I wouldn't be wandering these suburban roads at night. It's not safe here, sir." He cast a glance at me from under his brow, so wary that I couldn't help but wonder whether I was walking beside some clever rogue who only robbed when the odds were in his favor and never took unnecessary risks. But his next words, spoken almost in a whisper, quickly put me at ease. "Would you mind slowing down a bit, sir? Honestly, it's hard to keep up with you carrying this load." By then, the first houses of Asnières had come into view. "Well, you can say I've made it," said the peddler. "We don't sleep in the shop ourselves. It's guarded by a dog, a good one, strong enough to stand up to 4 men. And the apartments in the city center are too pricey for us. But you know what, sir? You've done me a real favor. When I walk with my box at night, my heart's never at ease. Don't turn your nose up, come in, share a bottle of warm wine with my wife, if she wakes up. She sleeps soundly and doesn't like being disturbed, but, pardon the expression, that's no big deal. Without the box, I fear nothing, and I'll walk you all the way to the Paris gates with my cudgel in hand. I declined, but he insisted. I held firm in my refusal, and he pressed on with his invitations. It was clear he genuinely wanted to lure me in as a guest. I must admit, the peddler wasn't bluffing when he called himself a talker. He spoke persuasively, and when he began asking why I refused, with a wounded air and hints that I was too proud to drink wine with someone of a lower class, I finally gave in and followed him down a deserted road toward one of those large, ramshackle houses that crowd the outskirts of the capital's suburbs. When we reached the house, I hesitated. The tall building, with its crumbling plaster, looked like a den for vagrants, or worse, a bandit's lair. With a single push, the peddler flung open the unlocked door, led me into a dark hallway, holding me gently by the shoulder, and guided me toward the staircase, which we had to find by touch, feet and hands groping in the pitch black. I kept fearing I'd fall through some trapdoor or into a cellar. At last, we found the first step. My hospitable companion said, "Well then, just 5 more floors to go." I rummaged in my pocket, found a box of wax matches, and lit the way. The peddler followed behind, groaning under the weight of his box, muttering with each step. Gotta admit, it's quite a climb. By the time we finally reached the top floor, the peddler pulled a key from inside his coat. It hung from a bit of string, and unlocked the door, inviting me in. I found myself in a room whitewashed with lime, where a table stood in the center, and along the walls were 6 chairs and a kitchen cupboard. "I'll try to wake my wife," said the host, "then I'll run down to the cellar for some wine. We can't keep it up here, it spoils in the heat." He stepped up to one of the 2 doors leading out of the room and called, "Hey, little blue." When no answer came, he repeated the call, first louder, then louder still, before pounding on the door with his fist, muttering through clenched teeth, "Will you wake up already, damn it?" After waiting a moment, he pressed his ear to the keyhole and added, in a suddenly calm voice, "Well then, let her sleep if she's out cold. Just wait here a minute, I'll be right back with the wine." He left, and I sank into a chair, resigned to whatever fate awaited me. What am I even doing here? I thought, and then I flinched. From the adjoining room, where the peddler claimed his wife was sleeping, came the sound of whispers and cautious movement. Damn it, had I walked into a trap? How could little Blue sleep through her husband's noisy return, his shouting and banging on the door? Was it all a prearranged signal to accomplices? "The mark's in the snare, I'll guard the exit, the rest is up to you." The rustling in the bedroom grew louder. Someone gripped the handle, turned the key in the lock. My heart began to race. Telling myself, "Well then, I'll fight," I backed into the room, grabbed the wooden chair by its back with both hands, and braced for a desperate struggle. The door creaked open. Through the narrow gap appeared a hand, then the head of a man in a round beaver felt hat. As he slipped between the door and the wall, I saw 2 eyes fixed on me. Before I could react, the tall fellow, barefoot, half-dressed, no tie, shoes in hand, yet oddly well-groomed and with a touch of gentlemanly air, leapt across the room and vanished down the staircase. The whole affair was beginning to take on a comic tone. I sat back down and waited for the peddler, who was taking his time in the cellar. At last, I heard his footsteps on the stairs. The sound made me burst into laughter, the kind that overtakes you when you're alone and can't quite suppress it. The peddler entered with 2 bottles and asked, "So, my wife's still asleep? Not even stirred? Guessing that little Blue had her ear pressed to the keyhole, I replied. Seems like she's asleep. He called again. Paulina. When she didn't respond, he stepped back from the door and explained. She doesn't like it when I bring friends over at night, even just for a glass of wine. So you think she's awake? Of course she is, he said, clearly annoyed. Then added, well, let's toast. He clearly intended to drink both bottles with me, one after the other. This time, I stood my ground. After one glass, I got up. The peddler no longer mentioned his promise to walk me to the Paris gates. Scowling at the door to his wife's room, he muttered with the air of a disgruntled commoner, or rather, a beast on the verge of fury. Still, once you leave, she'll have to open up. I watched him closely. He was growing angry, without quite knowing why, perhaps driven by some vague instinct, the intuition of a deceived man. The locked door clearly unsettled him. Just moments ago, he'd spoken of his wife with tenderness. Now, there was no doubt he meant to strike her. Shaking the door handle furiously, he shouted again. Paulina. From behind the partition came the voice of a woman who sounded as if she'd just woken. Heh? What? Didn't you hear me come in? Oh, for heaven's sake, leave me be. I was asleep. Open the door. When your guest leaves. What's the point of dragging strangers in here at night and throwing drinking parties? Stumbling down the stairs, I left almost as hastily as the man in the beaver hat, whose accomplice I'd become against my will. And all the way back to Paris, I kept thinking that I'd just witnessed one of the eternal dramas, played out daily and everywhere, in every imaginable setting.